Hi handsome, welcome to another Black Desert in a Nutshell, the series where I explain parts of the game without all the unnecessary fluff. This time, I'm taking on a suggestion from my viewer Mr. Sky05 on Twitch, who wanted me to talk about loot scrolls, how to use them, where to get them, etc. So let's get into it. Loot scrolls make you more money when grinding in two ways. First, they increase the amount of trash loot that you get from mobs, and second, they give you a 100% extra drop rate. They have two levels that you can use them on, and both of these give you the same amount of drop rate. The only difference between the two levels is that level 1 only gives you a 50% trash loot increase, whereas the level 2 gives you a 100% trash loot increase. Level 2 also runs out twice as fast when you have it on, so it will consume 2 scrolls per hour instead of just 1. But before we get into the math of the scrolls, let's show you where to get them first. The most obvious way is by playing on a seasonal server. You will get these time-filled stones you normally use for your Tuvala gear enhancing at almost any early game spot. 300 of these stones can be used to exchange for a single loot scroll. You get these from both grinding and gathering. I admit I haven't done much grinding on a seasonal character personally, so if you want some pointers, I recommend this video from Jabberwock that you can see on your screen, and I will hopefully remember to put it in the description as well. Now, gathering is a bit more of my forte, and I think that the best place for these stones is one you might already be familiar with: Behr Herbs. It is one of the fastest gathering spots in the entire game, giving you a higher chance to get these stones simply because you're gathering so much. It is good EXP, not the best, but still pretty good and better than most other gathering spots. But most importantly, it is super convenient if you're still somewhat of a new player and you haven't spent a lot of money on the game. You can buy a residence in Behr for contribution and then also rent a storage container for 10 contribution from, I believe, any storage keeper that you can then place inside residence, and that will give you access to the storage from that residence, removing the need for mates. And since Behr also has a stable keeper that can repair your gear, you can also use it to repair your tools if you don't have the tent either. If neither one of these are a concern to you, then good spots for these stones will always be the fastest ones. So places like the Orc Camp Herbs, Pilgrim's Haven or Heidel Sheep are good options for purely stones per hour. If you are more interested in also getting some EXP or money on top of these stones, I have a dedicated video in the series for gathering specifically, so feel free to check that one as well. If you are grinding, you can also take a weekly quest on a seasonal character to go to one of these spots of your choice and kill a given number of mobs for an extra 600 stones per week. And every zone that drops the stones also has a regional quest attached that gives you even more of these stones, but only one time. So it's not a bad idea to rotate through these one-shot spots. I haven't been able to figure out how often these regional quests resets. My guess would be once per season, which is every time that you get the seasonal ticket, but if anyone knows better, do let me know. The last big way to get these stones, and by extension get the loot scrolls, is by hitting up Tuvala accessories that you get from the Rift Echo. This is akin to the memory fragment scrolls you might already be familiar with. So you get these 3 bosses that spawn back to back, each of them drops either the stones or Tuvala accessories. You get that, heat them up for stones and repeat. It's an okay way to do it, but nothing special. That is kind of about it when it comes to the time-filled stones and using a seasonal character for your loot scrolls. Yes, you can get them from RPF and seasonal Atoraxion dungeon, but I don't think people really do those nowadays, so let's just move on. If you have a value pack, you will get 1 loot scroll every day for as long as the value pack is running. Doesn't matter if the value pack was free or not, you will get it in your challenge tab every single day. You also get a couple of scrolls from Twitch drops for watching any video streamer with the drops enabled. To claim them, first go to your Twitch inventory and claim it there. Then you need to go to the BDO's website, log in, go to account information, then purchase history, click on the bring drops and send it to your account. It will be delivered via in-game mail. And yeah, this is my shameless plug for my Twitch. If you don't know where to get these drops, find me. Wink wink. Now for some of the time-gated ways to get your loot scrolls. First off, we have the Radiant Chakatu seals. These are your daily login rewards. After a certain amount of days that you have logged in consecutively, you will get a Radiant Chakatu seal and you can exchange 20 of them for 30 loot scrolls. You also get loot scrolls on a weekly basis from participating in AOS, doing Pit of the Undying, and also from killing your Rift bosses. And the major time-gated way of getting loot scrolls are, of course, events. This will really depend on when you are watching this, but right now we have the Edania emblem event, which gives a decent amount of loot scrolls on a weekly basis as well. These events can be hit or miss, so just take what you can get. Alright, that's all the ways I can think of that are repeatable to get more loot scrolls. There might be some more that I missed, so do let me know, but I believe that most of these are like seasonal rewards, graduation books, etc., which are all kind of one-time things, so just get them when you can't really repeat them. Now for the second part of the video. In order to understand how loot scrolls work, we need to understand loot acquisition in BDO. The drop rate is very simple. The 100% drop rate increase basically doubles the innate chance that an item has to drop. So if an item has a baseline 10% of dropping, with the loot scroll it will become 20%. If an item has 0.5% chance, the loot scroll makes it 1%. If an item has 0.01% chance, the loot scroll makes it 0.02. The absolute maximum drop rate chance that you can have is 320% on a non-Arsha server without the castle buff. On an Arsha server, you can get another 50% drop rate on top of that, making the absolute cap 370%. And if you also are in a guild that owns a castle, then in certain spots based around the castle that your guild owns, you will get another 50% drop chance increase. You can also invest energy into a specific node that governs one specific grind spot for up to additional 10% drop rate that is not governed by the AP cap. Up to a total maximum of 400%. You cannot go over 400%, but most of you will reach the 320 or 370. The drop amount works in a very similar way. Every mob in the game has an assigned number of trash that they drop, and all the loot scroll do is increase that number by either 50% for blue scroll, so this would be that number times 1.5, or 100% for yellow scroll, so that number times 2. Important to note is that this number is always rounded down. So for example, the majority of mobs in Valencia, such as Kedri Ruins or Desert Nagas, have a baseline drop amount of trash loot set at 1. And you will still only get 1 trash per mob with a blue scroll, but 2 trash per mob with yellow scroll. If you're also curious about Agris, then the bonuses from Agris and loot scrolls are additive. So the 150% from Agris gets added to the 50% of blue or 100% from yellow, meaning you get either times 3 or times 3.5. Which for these Valencia mobs means you get 3 trash per mob with both blue and yellow scroll. However, in places where the 50% lands on a prime number, you still get an increase. So for example, Centaurs in Valencia have a baseline drop of 2. So blue scroll on its own increases this to 3, yellow to 4, blue scroll with Agris to 6, and yellow with Agris to 7 trash loot per mob. Of course, we should also look at the trash value to see how much of an increase we actually get in terms of silver. Because I value my time just a little bit too much to be grinding for hours without a scroll on, just to illustrate what is going to be 2 minutes of a video, I will use garmov.com to show you the change between the different loot scrolls. These are the trash loot values from various early game spots with blue scroll, and next to them is the increase to yellow. As you can see, the difference is really not that large, with some spots such as Blood Wolves giving you as little as 25 million silver per hour increase. Even in mid-game spots, such as Elvia Serendia, you are looking at about 100 million silver, and while there is definitely an increase of the gap between blue and yellow, the higher you go in gear score and spot, even an endgame, you're looking at 200 to 300 million silver difference. I suppose there are 2 questions left for the video. First, is it ever worth grinding without a loot scroll on? I would have to say not really, unless you legit have no loot scroll left and that is your way of getting them on a seasonal character. Losing out on the 100% drop rate is a huge deal, especially when you are grinding for things such as the infinite potions. At early game spots, you're losing out on like 200 to 300 million silver per hour if you do not use a loot scroll at all, and since this also scales up, just like the difference between blue and yellow, at endgame spots the difference becomes upwards of 1 billion per hour difference between not using a loot scroll and using a loot scroll. Now, there are the free zones in the game that have the tag no loot collection increase, and that works for both drop rate and drop amount, so threshold. But the only one of these zones I would even begin to recommend here is Sikraya Lower, as it is a place that you can get your merchant ring piece from, so you can pretend like you are working towards that goal. It drops time-filled stones, so you can go here on a seasonal character, and it's also decent combat EXP if you are still in the leveling process and that matters to you. The money here and the difference between these spots and other one-shot spots really depends on how you want to treat and count the Infinite Potion, PTs and Atani spots really, because the money at Sikraya is around 300 ml per hour, all of which is pretty immediate. You can just put those items on the center market. So were you to remove the PTs and Atanis from the other spots, you would probably get about the same amount of money if you grind those places without a loot scroll on. So do with that information what you will. The other question is very simple. What are you supposed to do if you don't have any loot scrolls? Well, you don't really have that many options. You can grind on a seasonal character in these spots I just mentioned, you can life skill, you can AOS, or you can just wait. I would recommend gathering on a seasonal character the most, as it doesn't require any loot scrolls, so you are never using any, and you gain quite a lot of them. I've done the hour, it better, and I got like 1600 of those time-filled stones, which is 5 blue scrolls. Also, if you just focus on lifeskilling, those loot scrolls will accumulate and you will eventually have more than you will know what to do with. And yeah, that is basically all there is to say about the loot scrolls. I hope this helped you in some way in understanding how they work and that I wasn't too nerdy for my own good, and maybe you even found new ways to get them. Do let me know if I missed something regarding loot scrolls. Remember to like and subscribe, and enjoy your grind.